I forgot to start recording. Oh, wait, we're only into number 3. So peer support. This is, especially in the group setting, it's making sure that the group members feel like they're supported by each other, that they belong there, that and that there's a genuine caring about it. But also on the professional level, it's making sure that you yourself have peer support, that you have a mentor, that you have a trustworthy supervisor you can go to. Mainly because, one, we all come to this field, like everyone else in this world, with our own traumas. And so we can react in ways that we don't understand. But if we have a good peer support program, peer support within our organization or even within our personal life, they can help us process those moments that we don't understand or why we reacted a certain way as a facilitator. The other way that it's important for peer support as a professional is because there's something called vicarious traumatization. Vicarious traumatization in our setting is when just purely hearing the stories of our clients and it going over and over and hearing all the negativity that people are facing can become traumatizing in itself for the professional. And we call this vicarious because you're as a therapist, you're entering your client's life, and you probably will learn more about your clients than their closest intimate partner. And some of that can get scary and it can be frustrating. And so having people around you to kind of keep a check on you is really, really important in this field. All right. Number 4 is collaboration and mutuality. I mean, and again, this goes back to the setting with our client, but also our professional setting, in that we want to create opportunities within the group settings for our clients to collaborate and have some mutual understanding. And this can be done through a lot of activities, you know, anywhere from art projects to formal presentations in some groups, to create this kind of collaborative working together, that we're not in this alone. Empowerment, voice, and choice is the notion that at any moment, what we should be doing for anyone who has experienced any type of traumatization is empower them to have a voice about it, to let them be heard, let them feel like they have control over their life. Okay. And then culture, historical, and gender issues. We've talked a few times in here about historical trauma, and this is kind of where this starts to fit in. Is there's when we're working with different cultures and genders, trauma is influenced differently. It manifests itself slightly differently. And so when we do a good intake and everything, that's why we ask about our clients' culture, where they came from, what their history is, what they identify in their gender, because all of these will play a role in how trauma is processed and is realized. In some communities, due to the culture and the community's history, sometimes it can be very difficult to get individuals to open up, because maybe they have a cultural thing that, you know, one gender can't talk within the other gender, or that there's a general notion of shyness and not being able to and you show respect through silence. That's the term I'm looking for. And that tends to occur in quite a few of the cultures and whatnot that you'll be working with, is that notion of respect through silence and all those. So culture and history and gender can be challenges. I'm not going to say they're roadblocks, but I'm going to say they're challenges to the facilitation process. So you have to be aware of those. Okay. All right. So that's a summary of the 6 principles. And now we're going to go through each one of these in kind of detail, but I want to stop and ask, does anybody have any questions right at this moment before we go through them in a detailed way? All right, so let's move on. So let's talk about, oh, okay, thank you, Warren. Let's talk about principle number 1. Is that throughout the organization, staff and people they serve, whether children or adults, should feel physically and psychologically safe. And that's important to note whenever you're facilitating groups and whatnot, is being situationally and environmentally aware and knowing, for example, if you're doing a community group, and let's say you're doing it at a church somewhere because they donated the space, or it's an affiliation, and every time you go into that church, the thing that you really should do is scan the environment and make sure that there's a couple exits, that the environment doesn't look intimidating or over stimulating, and those types of things. And as a facilitator, you have to create that environment sometimes. I've done groups in churches and schools and at other community-based places, and they don't always create a comfortable, safe feeling environment because they might have lots of clutter or whatever it may be. So one of our jobs should be to always go in before we have clients enter the space and make sure that it has the safety value that it should. So who defines safety? People who use services. Of course, safety generally means maximizing control over their own lives. For providers, safety generally means maximizing control over the service environment and minimizing risk. And this is kind of where I was talking in the previous slide, that our job as a providers is to make sure that environment is safe and that it minimizes any potential of triggering risk. Because as this slide notes, what people who have gone through trauma really are looking for is control over their own lives, because it often feels like everything is out of control. And then that gets into other things that deal with trauma, which is the hypervigilance, always looking out for your back, always worried, somewhat paranoia, and all of those things interrupt the group process and interrupt the client's ability to grow and develop within that environment. So this is just kind of some examples of safety and respect, having decent signs, those types of things. However, I would just put this out there. Thinking about safety and respect, what does everyone think about that sign on the left? And why would I say that that's not a good example of safety and respect?
I wouldn't feel comfortable going there because, if they see me on that side, they're gonna know what I'm going for, and it's not really confidential.
Perfect. Yeah, just what you want to do when you walk into a building is what everyone see you go to the detox center or the STD area, right? So this is minute ways of an environment. Yes, exactly. Everyone knows. This is an example of how well-intending this sign probably is, providing people with directions. The intention is good, telling people where to go, But on the safety end, this well-intending sign creates a lot of, and if you can imagine, if you're traumatized because of your STD or because of everything, this is a very intimidating and non-safety type sign. Lacks a lot of respect. Okay. Good call on that. All right. We also create safety through our interpersonal communications, and this is what we're supposed to be, right? We're supposed to be communication experts, especially in the group setting. So interpersonal interactions in this sense should always promote a sense of safety. Excuse me. Let me check something. Let me see if this comes with an activity. And so thinking of this class and thinking of what you've learned about facilitation in groups, why don't we put in the chat like a couple ways through just pure communication that you can create safety in the group setting. So just go ahead and put a couple ways that you can communicate it and in the chat. Oh, come on, don't be shy.
Can I say it or do we have to put it in the chat?
Say it, go for it.
Is using language that is accessible to everybody, using language that is easy for our clients or the individuals that we are speaking with can understand. I think that's a really big one.
I think it's perfect, and it's a perfect example. How do you think that creates a feeling of safety when you use proper language?
I think, and also it creates a better understanding of, you know, of whatever is being spoken about, and understanding of, like, so they can, that creating language one for them, so they have those words for what they may be going through or what they may be feeling or experiencing.
Perfect. So there's two parts of that that you just mentioned that I think are important. One is it makes us more personable and understandable, right? But then it also, the second part is that it provides our clients with a language that, one, is understandable to them, but two, also gives them a voice, right? So great example. Leanne said general rules at the beginning of group and boundaries. Perfect. Yes, yes. Establishing those rules up front and making them clear and, as was mentioned, understandable. Lorenzo put, I'm a blunt person, so I feel like sometimes I come off too straightforward, but that's how I feel like gets people attention. And Lorenzo, that can be true, but it also can be healing for a person who's gone through trauma, because remember, one of the next principles is basically honesty, open and transparent. So sometimes being a blunt person, especially for someone who's been through trauma, is actually a little bit healing, because they know you're being real and truthful about what you're doing. So you just want to, make sure that the language, work on the language part and all those things. So, but yes, yeah, sometimes just being open is good thing. Yes, yes, talking and explaining confidentiality. And again, we can't enforce confidentiality with our clients, but we can model it for them, right? So that clients should know that you will not disclose anything unless it violates a law. But making sure you create that environment where everyone else feels that they need to have that same standard and keep their stuff understandable. So.
I think another one is accountability, holding ourselves accountable to keep that space. So that's also as the person that is conducting like the group setting, and as a person that is participating, how do we hold them accountable in a safe space, a safe way for them as well?
Perfect. And I think that's another good example, you know, when there's something reassuring about being held accountable and to the situation, in that it reduces kind of the chaos that a lot of people are going through when they go through trauma. And so making sure holding each other accountable is really important. Very good point. Okay. All right. Good examples. Great. Wonderful. All right. So, I did want to, it was also mentioned about holding yourself accountable. And I think that's so important. You should never have such a huge ego that when you mess up in a group, that you cannot explain to the group what you did. I know that there's been a few groups where I was talking so fast, and I've probably had a few classes like this too, where I'm talking so fast and I'm trying to get my ideas out, that I take verbal shortcuts. And sometimes what I said was miscommunicated. And then that was relayed to me after a group, and you should never have enough ego that you can't go to that next group and say, you know what, I have an apology to make. What I stated, blah, 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 in this group wasn't relayed correctly, or it offended others. And I just want to explain myself and then provide everyone else with the opportunity to talk about it. Don't be afraid to do that. That's so important to be able to do, is to get your own self-admission when you've done something wrong. And also in line with that, and this is also why it's such a good point, thank you, is that it goes back to the idea earlier in the semester we talked about, one of the important skills of being a good facilitator is knowing one's own biases, and knowing you know, the things that make you uncomfortable. And it's that accountability part that, one, if you mess up with a bias by saying something inappropriate or something, you can admit to it. But two, having constant reflection on whether or not you yourself are entering any bias into your group setting and guiding people inappropriately or wrongly. So very good points. So just some reflection pieces to think about when you look at your organization, and the safety value on the organization level is, do staff feel safe in your organization? Why or why not? Do people feel safe? What changes could be made to address safety concerns? And always answering those questions every once in a while is a good idea. All right, this comes, and a few of you made this point before, is principle 2, trustworthiness and transparency. Organizational operations and decisions are conducted with transparency, and the goal of building and maintaining trust among clients, family members, staff, and others involved in the organization. And on the skills level, this often means that, well, and I'll even put this out there, is you know, sometimes we office place gossip happens, but we always need to make sure we're establishing boundaries of where that can occur, when it's appropriate. Because sometimes the person that is the difficult person may be just having a trauma response, or may just be going through trauma themselves. And those things behind people's back, that gossiping and everything, can create even that much more trauma for that person, and make it less likely that if they are causing any real problems with the organizations, that those problems will actually be fixed. So staying away from those types of things. In staff meetings, when you're staffing clients, sometimes the dark jokes start to come out, and making sure that you don't get swept up in the, you know, kind of quote unquote making fun of the client because you're being stressed yourself, and that makes you feel better. that's kind of what was stated just earlier, right? About keeping yourself in check, doing your own self-reflection, and making sure that everything you do is done in front of the individuals that it serves, right? Okay. Examples are making sure people really understand their options. Making sure that even in the group setting, even when a person has been ordered by a court to attend your treatment center, it's being able to say, you know what, you don't have to be here if you don't want to. Everyone has choices. And for some people, the choice is to violate their parole or violate something else. But we have to make sure that in our environment, that our clients know that it's a choice to be there, even though it may not feel like it is, or that there may be consequences for not being there. But your group itself should be voluntary. Okay. And there's a great link in the thing. Thanks, Rosanna, about looking at your own biases. I would definitely take a look at that. So, thank you. Being authentic, we talked about this. Directly addressing limits to confidentiality, making sure that clients know at what point you have to disclose what they've stated. So on the organizational level, we can always be asking, how can you promote trust throughout your organization? Do people that's being served trust your staff? And if so, why or why not? What changes could be made to address trust concerns? And again, this is just some reflection thoughts that you can go through as you think of these 6 principles within your own work life. All right, principle 3, which is peer support. Peer support and mutual self-help are key vehicles for establishing safety and hope, building trust, enhancing collaboration, serving as a model of recovery and healing, and maximizing a sense of empowerment. What a statement. It actually encapsulates most of all the other principles into this idea that, I'll go back to this idea that humans are social beings. And when we go through trauma, when we're going through a mental illness, one of the most tempting things to do is to self-isolate, or being isolated by someone else, like an offender. And this isolation can actually drive the worsening of symptoms within the individual, of whatever issue that they may be having. And so having proper peer support is important to anyone's recovery. In the group setting, we do this by making sure that all group members are, in a sense, a peer support specialist, as we could say. And I know there's jobs titled that, but it's something that they're a person who's going through the same things that they are, and can provide an understanding to what's going on, but also just that pure interaction and that pure support of interaction can be enough to alleviate symptoms of what a person is going through. And so this idea of peer support is very important. In the Shan, we actually have a word for it. It's called iwomta, called working together. And this kind of encapsulates that core value that we have here at the college, that really we shouldn't be trying to fix things in an isolated manner, that we should be able to rely on each other and have that mutual support. Okay. And again, it goes back to this point, and I'm going to circle it because it's an important one. It maximizes a sense of empowerment. And that is one crazy looking circle, but it works. Maximizing a sense of empowerment. That's what we should be working for, is helping people become empowered over their life and have a sense of control over their life. Okay, some examples of peer support is One, it's a flexible approach to building mutual healing relationships among equals based on core values and principles. All right, based on these core values, as you could say, okay? Peer support should be 1, voluntary, 2, non-judgmental, 3, respectful, 4, reciprocity, and the 5th is empathetic. And when we're talking about the last two, reciprocity is this idea that if I give you support in the group setting, you're going to give me that same support when I'm going through something. And empathy is truly understanding the way someone else feels. It's not feeling sorry for them, but it's actually experiencing some of the pain that they're experiencing. And this, I will have to admit, is what puts a lot of therapists and group facilitators at risk for that vicarious traumatization that I talked about earlier. So it's important to keep a check on that and limitations of it. So some of the benefits of peer support: encourages recovery, self-management, helps to address factors of engagement. When we're talking about HIV, it reduces trauma associated with it. I'm not alone in idea. And when we look at things like combat PTSD, we have actually found that this is one of the number one preventative tools we have right now in the treatment center that actually reduces the symptoms from combat PTSD, is having PTSD groups with individuals who went through the same type of combat PTSD. And if you can even keep them closely enough within their military areas, such as Army or Marines, that's even better, because that creates a sense of, 1, camaraderie, 2, a sense of familiarity, and 3, it provides that this I'm not alone idea, that I'm not the only person that are suffering from it. And we found that in effective groups like that, and groups that really try to build that community, that we're seeing that the rates of PTSD or recovery from PTSD is much, much higher in those types of group settings. And, it serves as a bridge between receiving services and community resources, and establishes a sense of safety and hope, builds trust, enhances collaboration, and makes a sense of empowerment, which, yes, I'm going to underline this again. I won't try to circle it this time, because that empowerment is really when you can really help start the recovery process. Let's skip this one for now. And this is these things that we're just going through. This is just an example of how peer support has really worked. Not only within the group setting, peer support has been used on the individual level as well, where a person who has a disorder of some type goes through some type of peer support training, and then they're assigned to individuals who are just then entering into some type of treatment modality. And that peer support, it's actually something that I analyzed back in Montana, and we found that it does work really good for individuals who have severe mental illness. It loses its efficacy when the severity goes down. So that's something that is something to keep in mind if you ever go into a peer support setting, is that there has to be a right fit as well. Out of curiosity, no, we'll go on. So in the HIV setting, this is some examples of common threads for a peer support program: a small group, peer-led HIV trained organization designed to enhance the abilities of women's lives in this certain setting. And so that is an example. Okay. And again, when you're thinking about peer support, these are some common questions that you'd want to ask. Does your organization offer peer support? If not, why? What barriers are there to implementing peer support in your organization? And does your organization offer access to peer support for people who use the service? If so, how? All right. So principle number 4 is collaboration and mutuality. And this is partnering and leveling of powers differences between staff and clients and among organizational staff from direct care to administrators. Demonstrates that healing happens in relationships and in meaningful sharing of power and decision making. Everyone has a role to play. One does not have to be a therapist to be therapeutic. And that's probably one of the biggest challenges of facilitating groups or even just being a therapist altogether, is that your clients come to you thinking that you hold some type of special power. I'm going to use the word power that will that has allowed you to know how they're going to heal. And so a lot of times clients will come and they'll expect that just by being in your presence and taking your advice, that will be healing in and of itself. And so that it creates a power differential between the therapist and the client. And one of our jobs as a therapist should be to reduce that feeling of power differential between us and our clients. We'll go back to earlier in the semester when we talked about client-centered approach, when we talked about Carl Rogers' approach, that within the first parts of a treatment modality, it should be getting to know the client, but also making the client feel like they're the experts about themselves, not you. Because once they create this idea that I can gain the knowledge, I can gain the understanding, and this person is here just to help facilitate this, that power difference between the therapist and the clients is greatly reduced. And what that ends up doing is it ends up being more mutual beneficial for the client and the therapist. Research has shown that spending time to reduce the power differences between clients and staff actually decreases the symptoms that the individuals in their population are suffering from. So one research showed that peer support within an organization for depression, and if it's implemented in the group setting and the organization setting, that we actually see depression symptoms go down at a greater rate than when that power differential isn't taken down in the group setting, that the therapists maintain it. Okay. So this is the importance of this collaboration and mutuality, is really getting the client say it. And another good example of this is earlier in the semester, we talked about setting up the rules for the group. And starting off with getting buy-in to the basic rules, but then giving the group ownership to create any other rules that they feel are necessary for their group. So that, again, that starts that collaboration and mutuality type of setting. So here's just some examples from these folks. Is staff communicate in a way that promotes partnerships provided with a culture of caring, empathy, and safety. Seeks to understand the whole person, going back to client-centered based practices, is that we shouldn't just get to know a set of symptoms a client is going through. In order to truly help someone, we have to understand the whole person. And again, that's why I say that most good assessments basically follow that Maslow's pyramid, where we actually need to look at each area of the person's life in order to understand where their symptomology is coming from, at least from an environmental and social perspective. There's some reflection points. What true partnerships does your organization have? What are some examples of administrators and frontline staff working together in a partnership? I really didn't address that because I wanted to stay more with the client in on this, is that good helping organizations try to cut down the levels between top level administrators and frontline staff. It's called flattening your organization, where power isn't necessarily concentrated in just one space and decisions are not made in an isolated space. Okay. Principle number 5 is empowerment, voice, and choice. Individual strengths and experiences are recognized and built upon. The experience of having a voice, a choice is validated, and new skills are developed. The organization fosters a belief in resiliency, and I would argue that positive mind growth is another important point, and I'll get to that in a moment. Clients are supported in developing self-advocacy skills and self-empowerment. So in this area, what a new terminology that has come out, at least in the last 10 years, it really has taken off, is this idea of a growth mindset, right? And what a growth mindset is it's understanding that a person can be experiencing difficulties and can have roadblocks, but it's not making those roadblocks an excuse for not becoming the person that they want to become or that you want to become. That what we should focus on is a person's potential, not their barriers. It's the belief system that everybody has the ability to change, and that really deep down inside we all want to. We all want to make a difference. We all want to make some change. And so the idea of growth mindset is that you don't look at people for their deficits, you look at people for their potential. And it kind of goes to this, and that helped develop this idea of self-advocacy, and self-empowerment, the ability to stand for yourself because someone else believed that I can change. I have the ability to do that. And so this creates, a sense of resiliency. It kind of helps with all three of these. So in the group setting, this means that when we're working with clients, the question should be, okay, this is what you did to get you where you're at, but what are things you could have done that would have made the outcome difference? Because it's no good, it does us no good just to focus on this is what happened and this is why. Now we need to focus on how you have that ability for that not to occur again, or to understand where change could have been made. And in this area, it's also important, especially in the group setting, to make sure that everybody has a voice. And that if at some moment, some clients will monopolize the time because they're going through stuff. But even when that happens, it's really important to stop and validate everybody else's feelings about what's going on. And so it's kind of a time thing because, groups don't, go on. Sometimes the lights get shut off. And so managing those kind of conversations can be difficult. But even if one conversation takes much longer than you expect, it's still important to go through with each group member and process it at least really quickly with them and talk to them and make a little list of what they want to talk about so that in the next group session, you can pick up the conversation. So here's some examples. When doing an intake, tell me what talents, strengths, and interests you bring to our community. Include treatment activities designed and led by service recipients, not just facilitators. And I'm going to be honest with you, some of the greatest groups I've had is when I given my group members homework that they had to present on in the next group in a fun way. And it can be enlightening, and you could really show you your client's strengths when they can engage in that type of activity where they become kind of quote unquote the teacher. And then turn problems into strengths. And again, this is that growth mindset idea that, yeah, there's a deficit, but what skills and abilities do you currently bring to the table that we can reduce that deficit? And what other services or community or family can be accessed in order to lower the probability that that barrier will affect you in the future? And then some reflection points again in the organization. Can you think of examples of settings of empowerment, voice, and choice? What about for staff? Can you think of policies or practices that do the opposite, that take voice and choice and decision-making away? And how can you facilitate change in that? Okay. All right. We'll hit number 6, and then I'll close this down for right now and ask if anyone has any questions. Culture, history, and gender issues. An organization actively moves past cultural stereotypes and biases, offers gender-responsive services, leverages the healing value of traditional cultural connections, and recognizes and addresses historical trauma. Okay. And I've spent a little bit of time on this already. Okay, is that it's really important to understand where your clients come from and what they're about. And when we enter any type of stereotype or bias into that situation, we're not really able to really get beyond our own cognitive blockages and really understand what's going on in the client's life that then can promote more of a healing process. And so we need to talk about, and we actively need to talk about the importance of culture and how it influences the individual. And in our setting, especially working in Native American communities, we need to make sure that we talk about both cultures, the dominant culture and then the Native American culture, and how does Westernization influence what they do? How does that influence their current culture? And we need to address and accept historical trauma, that it does have an impact on individuals, and it has a different impact on different individuals. And we can't deny it. And I guess that's one point that needs to be made is even though deep down you cannot believe something that your client says, it's always important to validate that that's their current experience. And that even if they're quote unquote lying about something, that's still going to become their lived experience. That's going to become what they base their decisions on. And so even within a therapeutic setting, and if you know something is a blatant lie, it's still a reality for that individual. And so it's important not to validate that was their experience at that time, but then helping them move beyond that through really processing the situation and going through it. So that's just some important point to make on this end. Okay. And this is just an example that the Jacobson's Institute on Women's Health uses to talk about how they take care of trauma response. So they start with environment, calm, safe, empowering, screening, inquiring about current and lifelong abuse, PTSD, response, on-site and community-based programs, and then foundation, trauma-informed values, robust partnerships, clinical champions. So this is one way an organization tries to implement a trauma-informed culture within their primary care situation. And then just some reflection points. I think we probably better. Sorry, I'm just seeing what I missed. Okay. All right, I think this is a good place to end our conversation on this so far. Is healing is possible, and we'll end with this Richard Mollica quote that says, "Healing from trauma, like healing from physical injury, is a natural human process." And this may sound kind of on the metaphysical level, whatnot, but we're actually finding more and more evidence that a lot of what we think of as emotional pain is actually physical pain in the brain. So, for example, when a person is rejected by someone, whether it be an intimate partner, a coworker, someone in the group process, anyone who experiences some type of rejection, the area of the brain that processes that is not the amygdala or the emotion areas of the brain. The area that actually processes that is on the upper stratum above the thalamus. It is the same area of the brain that processes pain when you break your leg or you cut your finger, or you have some other type of physical assault to your body. That is the area of the brain that lights up when you experience social rejection. And we're coming to this understanding that a lot of what we think is emotions, pain, and whatnot is not really. It's actually the same thing in the brain as physical injuries. And I want you all to keep that in mind. What our people that come to us are going through is something that is not only psychologically ruining, it's actually physically ruining. And that's why, especially when working with a lot of people who have been rejected, that's why a lot of times they will also have other unexplainable pain symptoms that don't come from physiological causes. So you can have someone who, because of all of the rejection they've experienced in their life, become inambulatory, for example, have to be in a walker or a scooter, will have same symptoms as someone going through with cancer, because we know that those prolonged levels of rejection, again, break down the walls of the proteins within the immune system and stop the body from fighting against potential diseases, which can create what we call a pseudo disease, where a person can completely go through a cancer process, but no trace of cancer can be found in their body. And that's what trauma can do. That's the ability that trauma has on people's both physical and mental well-being. And that's why we need to see this as a natural process, and that we have to allow healing with the support, like you would bandage a leg, and then the continued care for that leg is important, just like with any type of injury. So, all right, I'm going to stop sharing right now. And I'm going to ask, does anybody have any questions about what we've talked about today?
I guess I don't have a question, more as just a comment. When it comes to when we have like those clients that take a big chunk of time when we're in our group, how do we efficiently pass the mic to the next person and just manage that time? Is it just comes better with time and experience, or is there like a key point that you suggest or you may use in your groups?
It does come with experience and time and kind of skill and in managing that. Sometimes it comes down to nonverbal cues. And kind of being able to kind of give the client the notification that, hey, you know, you're taking up other people's time. And so it comes with being able to effectively communicate that without harming or making them feel like they're not going to be heard. A literal skill that I've seen used that's just very literal is that one of my facilitator friends who was really good at it had a person who would monopolize all the time. And so he used one of those sand timers. You know, you can buy them for like 5 minutes and say, okay, it's process time. And each of us will take 5 minutes to process what's going on, and then they'll turn the thing over and give each person their 5 minutes. If they don't take it all, that's fine. I've seen that used in a very literal way, but it does come with a lot of skill development in getting nonverbal cues into play, being able to encourage a client to tell their story to their fullest, but also make sure that they understand that they need to stop and ask for help. And so those are just some suggestions, but it does take quite a bit. So, okay. And Laura and Tina, thank you for your kind comments. Okay. Is there any other questions or comments?
This is our last class?
This is
you?
it. This is it. We are done. And again, your last assignment would just be to hand in your notes from this lecture. So.
Can we can we just take a picture of them, like, or do we have to type them up?
That would be the most of, yeah, I would just, yeah, take a picture of them. Yeah. I think that's the best way. There is the option, if you did type your notes while you were doing this, you could like copy and paste them or upload a Word document if you'd like. Okay. All right, gang. Well, thank you for being in this class this semester. I enjoyed all of you. You made great comments, and I do look forward to seeing some of you in classes again. Congratulations to those who are just about done or are finishing. So with that being said, take care and have a great rest of your semester.
Yeah, I just wanted to add one more thing. Thank
Yes.
you. Thank you. You taught so much. It was a very informative class, and I definitely learned a lot. I tried to take the best notes I could this entire semester. Thank you.
Great. Thank you for those kind words.
Thank you.
Thank you, Lorenzo. Take care.
Thank you for all your teaching.
Thank you.